heartily endorse what John Pavich has said this morning. John's an extraordinary candidate, and I believe what he's doing now is raising the issues that people really care about. And accountability is one of those issues. Yesterday, a lot of us across this part of the world were talking about the Bears game, thinking about Halloween costumes, wondering about that Friday night high school football game. And while we were preoccupied with the things that make our lives more pleasant, we lost 11 American soldiers in Iraq. This month has been one of the bloodiest months in Iraq for American soldiers in the last 2 years. Just a week ago, I was in Iraq, and in that week, we lost 27 soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors. The death toll in Iraq now is over 2,760. And when I talked to the troops over there and met with Illinois soldiers, time and again they said, does anybody back home care? Are they paying attention to what's happening here? And I think that's the important question. It's the question that John Pavich has raised this morning. Why hasn't this Republican-led Congress asked the important questions about our policies in Iraq? Why haven't they accepted their constitutional responsibility for oversight hearings, going to fundamental issues of our policy and our plans? Instead, they've reverted to these simplistic, mindless slogans. Stay the course, cut and run, take your pick. It isn't about that. It's like a Marine told me as we walked across the dusty road by the Euphrates River in Iraq. He said, Senator, staying the course isn't going to win this war. But those questions have not been asked. The Congress has refused to hold this administration accountable. And not just on the fundamental questions of policy, on some very basic questions. Why were our soldiers sent into battle without the equipment they needed to protect them? Why didn't they have the body armor they needed to come home safely? When parents come to me and say, I've given up on waiting for the Army to buy body armor, my wife and I took the money out of our savings account to buy our son body armor. That is a national disgrace. Spending billions of dollars and not protecting our soldiers does not meet our responsibility to them. Whether we're talking about body armor, armor on Humvees, protections on helicopters, time and again, this administration, under Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, has failed to meet the standard of care that we owe our troops. And, of course, Congress in the past has held administrations accountable, but not this Congress. It isn't the only issue. As John mentioned, you take a look at some of the other things that we're talking about here. No national energy policy. We're still too dependent on foreign oil. We're at the mercy of OPEC and the oil barons of the Middle East. We know what happens. Gasoline prices go through the roof. Families, businesses, farmers suffer. This administration does nothing. This Congress doesn't even ask the hard questions. This question about the Page scandal is another one. It really calls into question the leadership in the House of Representatives when it comes to this important issue. You know, there's a world of difference between what happened in the House and what happens in the Senate. The Senate administration of Pages is not in the hands of elected officials. It's in the hands of the Sergeant of Arms. The Sergeant at Arms in the United States Senate is a retired career officer in the Secret Service. Before him, a retired general from our Army who worked with the military police. When issues of security and safety are raised, these men have addressed them in a professional way. What happened in the House of Representatives with the Mark Foley scandal was far from professional. When they were given notice that Mark Foley was preying on and harassing these Pages, unfortunately, the leadership of the House did not call for an investigation by the Capitol Police, did not ask important questions of other Pages about whether they were also victimized, did not even take the issue to the bipartisan Page Board. They called Mr. Foley in and said, promise you'll never do it again. That's as much as they were able to do or wanted to do. So when John Pavich calls for accountability when it comes to this Page crisis, I think every member of the House has a special responsibility to join him in that call. There are many other issues which we can deal with and must deal with in Congress. But the first thing we have to remember is that each of us takes an oath of office to uphold this Constitution. And this Constitution gives a special responsibility to the House and to the Senate to ask hard questions of every president, of every party, at every moment in history. There's never been a more important moment for Congress to step forward with that kind of leadership. I'm glad to join John this morning in the call that he's made for this accountability. And I think that's exactly what's needed in this congressional district and in this nation. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. I think we'd be willing to take any questions. Is that
sure?
Fine, Senator. Senator Durbin, obviously the tension with the possible nuclear ambitions in North Korea are escalating. What should the U.S. do about the situation? And for you, Mr. Pavich, if elected, how would you handle the threat of North Korea?
By every measurable standards, let me repeat this in case it's being recorded. By every measurable standard, our foreign policy in North Korea has failed. In the 6-year period of time, they have gone from none to some 13 nuclear weapons, weapons which they will offer to sale to the highest bidder around the world, including terrorist organizations. North Korea is also now engaged in testing missiles that can deliver these nuclear weapons to nations far and near. And now we know that they've engaged in their first nuclear test. So by every objective standard, our foreign policy in North Korea has not been successful. Now will we continue more of the same or do something different? First, I think sanctions are an important step forward, because using the diplomacy route and engaging other countries to help us is the only way to make sanctions or an embargo work. And so I think that is a step in the right direction, but we need the cooperation of many nations like China. Beyond that, I think we need direct diplomacy too. I think the Bush administration's been wrong in saying that we won't sit down at a table with the North Koreans because they're so difficult to deal with. Throughout recent history, we have sat down at the table with many of our enemies. As someone in the Middle East once said, you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies. And we can't even approach peace or go down that road toward peace without the possibility of direct negotiations. In the coldest days of the Cold War, in the most dangerous moments, we sat down with the leaders of the Soviet Union to try to find ways to diffuse the violence and to have more of an understanding about how we can reach a more peaceful world. So pushing the diplomacy through the United Nations for sanctions, being open to direct diplomacy with North Korea, I think are things this nation should do. We have to take this very seriously. We live in a very dangerous world. And as frightening as it may be to think of what happened on 9/11, the possibility of taking a nuclear weapon in a briefcase or suitcase and bringing it into a major city could be even more damaging.
And I would certainly echo what the Senator said about the situation having deteriorated over the last 6 years. When the Bush administration took office, the regime in North Korea did not have nuclear weapons. In the previous 8 years, they had not produced plutonium to increase their potential to build to build higher numbers of weapons. Now the estimates are between 12 and 14 nuclear weapons North Korea has the capability to produce. Not only that, as the Senator touched on, they're rapidly developing their missile delivery systems, which means at some point in the near future, if something doesn't change, these nuclear weapons may be able to strike our allies and, God forbid, even our shores at some point in the not-too-distant future. I concur with the Senator when it comes to a path that we need to take in confronting North Korea. We do need a strong sanctions regime. We need to convince the other countries in the Security Council, the other countries of the world, to enforce those sanctions. Now, we're at a slight disadvantage, and I think that's largely because of this administration's very arrogant attitude towards the world of nations. Other countries are not in such a gracious position when it comes to giving the United States what it wants. And I think that's in large part because of the way this administration has engaged in diplomacy over the last few years. But we do need to pressure these countries to enforce the sanctions that have been agreed upon by the Security Council. And I also agree that we do need direct negotiations. Secretary Baker said it himself. At times we do need to deal one-on-one with even our worst enemies. That is how crises are solved. That's one of the first rules of diplomacy. And by ignoring them, this threat has grown ever more dangerous. But I also want to touch on the fact that this administration's decision to go into war in Iraq has absolutely limited our ability to respond with a military strike. Our military is stretched thin. We're bogged down in Iraq. We're seeing a resurgence of the Taliban in Afghanistan. And our ability to strike at North Korea with our military is very, very limited, which, as the North Koreans know and the Iranians are now watching, has limited our position and limited our position of negotiating strength when it comes to this issue. So we are in a much less safe position, a much less stable position in North Korea than we were just 6 years ago.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, I'm Bruce.
Mr. Mayor's office, pretty nice. Palm trees.